I used to hear a phrase when I was a kid. It was a phrase that people would use to describe how tired they were after a long day of work or maybe a long week of work. And I grew up, for a few years in a little town in Ohio, and there were a lot of manufacturing workers there and blue-collar trades folks and just manual laborers just grinding it out day after day. And they would use a phrase to describe how tired they were after working, and they would say, man, I am bone tired. Anybody ever heard that phrase? Bone tired. Nobody? That was just two people heard that, 3, 7, 9. Okay, good. A small minority of people have heard that phrase. But bone tired, basically it means you're so tired you can feel it in your bones. It just means like, I don't know if you've ever had that experience, but have you ever been so tired where it physically hurts? Like your body hurts because you're so tired. And if you get to that state of being bone tired and you don't stop yourself and you don't take a moment to rest, your body will do it on your behalf. Your body will just say, hey man, we're cutting out. You can try to stay awake, but the lights are off. All right? Nobody's home. I remember when I was in my 20s, just a couple years ago, and a couple in terms of a generous usage of that word. But I was working in Los Angeles, and I was working at a production company, and I was kind of burning the candle at both ends. So I was working really hard, and then I was staying out late at night, being dumb and young and single and weird and whatever. And so anyway, I'm like working hard, and I'm staying out late, and I got bone tired. I got to the point where my body, I was just tired. But I was also one of those guys, and I kind of still am, where I didn't want to rest, Like if you ever have a kid that's just like, I don't want to go to sleep. And you're like, well, it's midnight, and you got to go to sleep, right? But kids don't like to go. That was me. I carried that on post-adolescence. And so I didn't want to sleep, and finally my body was basically saying, dude, we're closing shop, okay? And I remember very clearly, I was at the gym, and I was jogging on the treadmill. And I don't even know if this is physiologically possible, but this actually happened to me. I was jogging on the treadmill, and I fell asleep while jogging. I promise you. I promise you. Now, it's one thing to fall asleep in church in those very nice, cushiony chairs, that are deep, and it's kind of dark in here, and, But it's another thing to be jogging, but I know that I fell asleep because I like woke up behind the treadmill, in kind of a crouch position, like, whoa, like that. And people were just looking at me like I was really weird. And then I thought, well, everybody in LA is a little weird, so whatever, man. I'm going home. I'm going to bed. So I went home, went to bed, crashed out. And, if you're bone tired, all you need is sleep. You sleep, you get up, you're refreshed, you're revived, you're good. Everything's good to go, right? So that's how you remedy bone tired. Today I want to talk about a different kind of fatigue. I want to talk about a deeper kind of tired that I'm calling soul tired. Has anybody ever been soul tired? It's a fatigue, it's an exhaustion that goes deeper than your bones. It goes down into your soul. Because your soul is carrying a weight that you can't carry on your own for very long before you get tired. You get fatigued. You get worn down. The problem with soul tired is a nap doesn't fix soul tired. A nap fixes bone tired, but it does not. If you're soul tired, I mean you're carrying a weight in your life, something in your spirit, something in your emotions, something in your finances, in your relationship with your kids, something heavy that you can't quite carry on your own, but you've been carrying it on your own. And so you get so tired that even when you sleep, you wake up tired. And you're still tired. You take a nap and you're tired and you get so exhausted. Some folks here today, I know this to be true because they told me in the first service, all right? But some of you today are soul tired. You're experiencing a fatigue in some area of your life that no amount of sleep can get rid of. Maybe for some of you today, you're longing for love, you're longing for a relationship in your life, and you're striving for it, and you're putting yourself out there, and you're trying to put your best foot forward, and you're trying to keep a positive attitude, and you're trying to reach out to somebody and see if somebody will return the love that you want to extend because you want a friend, you want a mate, you want a husband or a wife in your life, and you keep getting disappointed after disappointment after disappointment, and eventually you just get soul tired. You start to go, man, what is wrong here? And you start to get weary, and you start to get worn down. For some of you, it may not be the lack of a relationship. It might be that you're in a relationship that at one point was nourishing and sustaining and flourishing, but something has happened, and now there's animosity, and there's anger, and there's miscommunication, and it's not a place of rest for you anymore, and you're trying to work through it, but you're not getting where you need to get, and so you find yourself getting soul tired. Even in the relationship, you're soul tired, you're worn out, and some of you don't even know, like, do I have the strength to keep it going? Do I have the strength to carry on, to make this thing work? Do I have the strength to move forward? For some, it's not relationship oriented. It's like career or finances or something where you're striving, you're doing your best, you're trying, you've put your best foot forward, you're making all the right decisions, you're doing everything you can, but it doesn't work out the way you want, and eventually you just, man, you're fatigued, you're tired, you're soul tired. Does anybody know what I'm talking about anywhere? Some, and I know this to be true too, some of y'all have little kids, and little kids will wear you out. They'll just straight up wear you down. But you can get bone tired with kids, but if you get into that mindset of like, am I a good enough parent? Am I actually doing what I need to be doing for my kid? And you start getting anxious and worried about yourself as a parent, and maybe you're trying to give your kid something that you didn't experience, and so there's an internal pressure there and an internal drive, and you don't know if you're doing good enough. Eventually you go from being bone tired to soul tired because you're carrying a weight that you don't know if you can carry. And some of you have kids that are grown, and you love those kids, and you want what's best for them, and you raise them the best that you could, but they're not going down the path that you want them to go down. And they are struggling, and they're out there lost and wandering, and you're going, I want to be able to reach out and do something and help them and change that situation, but I can't do it, and I'm trying to carry this burden by myself, and I'm soul tired for my child who's out there, and I can't change the situation, and I'm exhausted, and I'm depleted, and I'm wore out. Today I want to preach about rest. I want to preach about what Jesus says about this experience of being soul tired, and how do we come through the experience of being soul tired. Because when Jesus was with his disciples in the first century, there was a moment where his disciples got soul tired. They got tired in that deep way, like we get tired. Jesus had sent them out. They had been working with Jesus for a while, and he had been training them and teaching them and leading them. So then he sent them out. He sent them out 2 by 2. He said, I want you guys to go out into the cities, and I want you to pray for people. I want you to heal people. I want you to preach the gospel. I want you to spread the word. I want you to get out there. I want you to do it. And he empowered them to do this. But what they found is that they had some success out there. They did heal some folks. They did reach some folks. Some folks came on board with their mission, but a lot of people turned them down. They experienced a lot of rejection. They experienced a lot of heartache. They experienced moments of homelessness. They experienced moments of hunger. Some of them got arrested. Some of them got falsely accused. Some of them were put in prison. Some of them were flogged and beaten in the public square for what they were trying to do. And when they came back to Jesus after this missionary journey, they were soul tired. They were worn down. They were worn out because they had put themselves out there so strongly, and they had met with some wins, but they had met with a lot of losses, and they came back from the expectation of high hopes, and they came back going, man, we put ourselves out there. We thought we were just going to sweep the world all of a sudden, and now we're tired, we're beat down, we're worried, we're anxious. We don't know where this thing is going. What are we going to do? They're tired. Jesus looks at them, and he's got this empathy in the way that he looks at his followers. He looks at you with empathy. He's experienced everything you've experienced. Did you know that? Every temptation, every heartache, every fear, every pain, every struggle that you've had, he's had that. So when he looks at you through the lens of, I know what you're going through. He looks at you like, I've been through that. I've struggled with that. I've experienced that. I know what you're feeling. He looks at you that way. He looks at his disciples that way, and then he looks at his other followers. There were thousands of followers that were thronging around him, and he looks at them and he sees, man, they're soul tired also. These are folks that have been living hand to mouth. These are folks that have been trying to please God, and their religious leaders are judging and condemning them for every little thing that they're not doing right, and they're striving and trying to live out this religious life where they're they're perfect in every way. And they've not only that, they've got a foreign government all around them. Every time you turn a corner, there's a Roman soldier standing there. You know how exhausting that is? To never feel safe. To always be on edge, to never know quite who's with you and who's against you. And so his followers are soul tired. Everybody's tired. And he's looking at them, and he says a phrase that is so powerful and so beautiful and so strong. And he's saying it to them, and he's saying it to you, and he's saying it to me. And here's what he says. He says, come to me. Come to me, all you who are weary. Come to me, all you who are burdened. Come to me, all of you who are soul tired, fatigued in your soul, and I will give you rest. I'm going to give you rest. Not the kind of rest that you get just by going to sleep. I'm going to give you rest in your soul that will revive your soul, that you will experience freedom and liberty and faith and hope and peace and inspiration again. You'll be yourself again. You'll be strong again. I'm going to give you rest. Come unto me, all who are weary. That's what he's saying to some of you today. Those of you who are weary and worn down and beat up from the feet up and tired and exhausted, he's saying, look, I will, come to me. I will give you rest. So I want you to help me today. Turn to your neighbor. Tell him the title of my sermon. It's Get Some Rest. Tell your neighbor, get some rest. Get some rest. When we think about physical rest, there's been a lot of research on the effect of physical rest and on the effect of sleep deprivation. Some of you probably know this intuitively because you're sleep deprived. When we first started U City Family Church, I was up here preaching. I was kind of right there preaching, and I was just learning how to preach. And I'm not saying I'm a great preacher now, but back then it was not. There were some generous people that were just gracious and going, Lord, help them just right now, just help them. But I was preaching. This is the very first sermon I preached, the very first Sunday, and I'm standing here preaching, and I look over, and there's a woman sitting in that row right there, the second chair. Not you, Casey, somebody else. And she was asleep, but she wasn't just asleep. She was leaning all the way over the arm of the chair. And I'm not I don't mean nodding off. She was, you know how you nod and then you try to stay awake? That was not. She was way past that. She was just like, I'm just out. I promise you, literally for the rest of the sermon, I was just like, I'm just going to preach over here because I don't want to. But she was tired, right? When we get to that point, I don't know, I wasn't in my notes. I kind of got lost in that story. But when they talk about the issues that arise from sleep deprivation, they've done a lot of studies on this. I want to read you just a list of the things that can happen when you're physically sleep deprived, when you're physically in need of rest. Here's what they say: if you're lacking rest in your physical body, here are some of the symptoms: aching muscles, mental confusion, memory lapses, depression, development of false memories, hallucinations, hand tremors, headaches, paraorbital puffiness. That's bags under the eyes. Some of us just get that genetically, so don't hate on us for that. Increased blood pressure, increased stress hormone levels, increased risk of diabetes, lowering of immunity, increased susceptibility to illness, increased risk of fibromyalgia, irritability, nystagmus, which is a rapid involuntary rhythmic eye movement. Have you guys ever had that? Like if you stayed up too late and your eye just does that and you can't stop it. Obesity, seizures, temper tantrums in children, violent behavior, mania, and other symptoms similar to ADHD, psychosis, and depersonalization disorder. So now, turn to the person next to you and say, no, seriously, get some rest, okay? Get some rest. Here's what they've discovered. When it comes to your body and your health, there are three main components, right? The first one is nutrition. That's what you put in. What you put into your body. Then there's exercise, and that's what you do with your body. That's what you exert. That's what goes out of your body in terms of physical exercise. But then the third one, and the one that is, least thought about, least discussed, is rest. Like how much time you give your body to recharge and rejuvenate. Because if you miss component number 3, then component number 1 and component number 2 are not going to help you. Your body will slowly experience this list of wackiness. So you need all 3, right? It's the same in our spiritual life. The first thing is, what are we putting in terms of spiritual health? What are we putting into our mind? What are we putting into our spirit? Are we spending time with the Word? Are we spending time in prayer? Are we spending time thinking and meditating on good things like the Bible teaches? Because that's the nutrition. That's what comes in. The second one is the exercise. What are we exerting, right? What are we doing with our body? Are we serving? Are we loving? Are we giving? Are we caring? Are we teaching? Are we honoring? Are we welcoming, right? Those are spiritual disciplines, spiritual exercises that will help give you strength. But the third one that we often forget, and I'm the guiltiest of all, is spiritual rest, experiencing rest. And as I was preparing for this sermon, at the beginning of this week, I really felt that God was saying, I want you to preach on rest. And I don't know, if you've been here 7 years, I don't think I've ever actually preached on rest as a topic all by itself once, because that's not my wheelhouse. Rest is not the thing that gets me excited. I don't get motivated by going, come on, everybody, let's go rest. It's just not me. I'm a doer. I like to do, and then I fall asleep and I wake up and do some more. That's just me. But I really felt like God was saying, look, I want you to preach on rest because you've got folks in this congregation that are desperately in need of rest. Here's one of the questions that comes up for me. What is it in our life that causes us to be deprived of the kind of spiritual rest we need? In other words, what are the symptoms? What are the symptoms and what are the causes? What causes us to be lacking in the kind of spiritual rest that Jesus talks about? And I'm going to give you 4. So if you're taking notes, write these down. The first cause of soul fatigue is self-reliance. If you spend any time under the misapprehension that you can work it all out by yourself, you will find yourself so depleted and so fatigued and so worn out that you will not be able to stand up. I mean, you seriously, and again, I'm preaching to the choir of one, because I tend to do that. I tend to be like, okay, we can do this. Here's what we're going to do, and this will be this way. And it's usually my wife who goes, hey, pastor, you should pray and invite God into your plan because you're not going to be able to do it without him, all right? And then I usually do that, which is a good thing. But this is what happens. We get to believing that we can do it all on our own, but then when we run into that struggle, we run into that difficulty, we run into that hardship in life, that thing over which we have no control, that we talked about a minute ago, whatever category that is for you in relationship or finances or career or whatever. You run into that thing and you realize I don't have control over this thing. I cannot rely upon myself to actually get this thing done. If you don't then turn to God, you will begin to feel the soul fatigue set in because you keep trying to do it on your own. And if you're not careful, if that doesn't motivate you then to turn to God, one thing that a lot of us do then is then we turn to somebody else to see if they can help fill us with the rest that we need. Right? We turn to somebody. Some people look to their mate as if their mate is their Messiah. And they start expecting their mate or their friend or somebody else to address the problems that they're experiencing in their life. And when that person cannot do that and does not do that, then we start experiencing disappointment with other people. And that leads to a lot more fatigue. That leads to a lot more stress. That leads to a lot more uncertainty, right? Because now we've realized we can't do it on our own, and we've turned to somebody else to have them carry our baggage, and then we discover, oh, they've got some baggage too that they're trying to carry, and they can't carry mine, and I can't carry theirs, right? So now I'm not able to do it on my own, and nobody else is able to do it for me. And then what happens a lot of times is we start to turn to distractions to find rest. We start to turn away from our own self-reliance. We start to turn away from other people. And we just start to try to find rest in diversions and distractions and things that will just, entertain us or divert us or distract us from the struggle that we're experiencing. And not all distractions are bad. Some of them are good things, but if they're a distraction from the main thing, then they become bad because they've distracted us. And we start to, and when we experience those distractions and we start going down these, these off paths, we start getting off the path that God has for us and trying to get back on the path, that's exhausting. And we start experiencing that soul fatigue, and it sets in, and it gets deeper, and it gets more and more difficult to overcome. And once we have gotten to that point, we have tried it on our own, we have leaned on other people, we have then tried distractions and found that those are not satisfying, then we begin to experience a sense of anxiety and worry in our life because now we don't know how to get to where we wanted to go in the first place, and we don't know how things are going to turn out. And if you've ever experienced anxiety or worry in your life about the future, let me tell you something, it is exhausting. It is exhausting. It's like you could sit on the couch and worry for 15 minutes, and your soul will be so tired. It's like it ran a marathon. It's exhausting to be full of worry. It's exhausting to be trying to be self-reliant and try to work it out on your. It's exhausting to try to rely on other people and experience the disappointment of that. It's exhausting. It's exhausting to be heading down distractions and diversions. It's exhausting. So Jesus says, look, I want you to come unto me because I'm going to give you rest. I'm going to give you rest. And then the question arises for me, like, okay, so what do you mean by that? How are you going to give me rest? What do I need to do to get the rest that you want to give to me? Right? What am I supposed to do? And I love what he says, because the next line he says this. He says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and I am humble in heart. Now, that phrase, take my yoke upon you, immediately resonated to the first century audience that Jesus was preaching to. My job as a pastor sometimes is to take what the sermon illustrations that Jesus gave and then try to, translate them to a 21st century audience. Because I don't know about you, but I just haven't run into very many yokes this week, right? I just don't see yokes around that much, right? So Jesus says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take my yoke upon you. Now watch this. Jesus is speaking to an agrarian society. He's speaking to people who, if you stood up where he was talking and looked around, you would see somebody with an ox in a yoke tied to a plow in a field, right? And so it was an analogy, a sermon illustration that you could see everywhere you went. He said, take my yoke upon you. And that's how you would plow the field. You would, and he's basically saying life is like a field. And you're plowing the field of the relationship and the career, and plowing the field of your family, and plowing the field of your hopes and dreams and aspirations, right? But you're doing it by yourself. Because there were two kinds of yokes that would have come to mind to the first century audience. The first one is this kind. This is a single yoke. A single yoke is a yoke that it's just for one ox. And it just goes over the neck of one ox, and then you tie that yoke to the plow, and that one ox then goes through the field. Now, if you're poor and you can only have one ox, then it's better than trying to plow it by yourself. But it's not a great way to plow the field because the ox can weave and get off track, and the ground is dry and hard, and the climate is arid, and if your ox gets tired, and there's a lot of problems with trying to plow the field with one ox. But that's one of the things that Jesus is referring to, right? But there's another kind of yoke in the New Testament, and it's a double yoke. And this is where you have two oxen, and they each have their head in the yoke, and now they're walking side by side. So here's what Jesus is saying. Here's what he's saying to them. Here's what he's saying to you. Stop trying to plow the field by yourself. Take your yoke off of you. The burden that you're carrying, take that off, and come and get up under my burden, because I'm going to be in the yoke with you. You see, I'm in the yoke with you, so when you are struggling, and when you are worried, and when you are tired, and when you are uncertain, and when you are unclear, you can lean on me, and I'm going to walk with you, and I'm going to talk with you, and your pain is going to be my pain, your joy is my joy, your heartache is my heartache, because we're in intimate relationship with each other, because we're doubly yoked. We're yoked together, you see? So here's the first thing that happens when you yoke with Jesus. First is you enter into intimate relationship. This is what he said. I don't want you to be observant in your religion, because observant in your religion means that God is far away from you and you are trying to please him from far away. And you're still trying to do it on your own. Still self-reliance. It's just in the guise of religion. Okay? He said, I'm not trying to get you to be observant in your religion. I'm trying to get you into intimate relationship with me. Intimate, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, walking down the row, plowing the field together. I want you right here with me. I can hear you. I can hear you breathe. I can feel you next to me. You're right here with me, and I'm going to walk with you, and I'm going to talk with you. I'm going to plow with you. We're going to do this together. There was an amazing moment in Olympic history in 1992. There was a runner. His name was Derek Redmond. And Derek Redmond was one of the fastest runners in the world, and he ran the 400-meter. Brilliant runner, amazing runner. He had already won gold in the World Championship that year. He had won gold in the European Championship that year. Everybody thought Derek Redmond was going to win gold in the 1992 Olympics, and he was, just a beloved figure. And there were 65,000 people in the crowd at that Olympics that year, and they were just, a massive stadium. And he took his place at the starting line, and all the other runners were ready to go, and they fired the gun, and off they go, and he's just cranking, man. He's just cruising around this track, and it looks like he's going to win it. It looks like he's going to take it all. He gets to the 150-meter mark, and you can see, when you watch the film, you see that suddenly he seizes up, and he grabs the back of his leg. And what happened was, they found out later, he broke his hamstring, snapped his hamstring, just like that. I mean, just running at full speed. And his body just falls to the ground. I mean, he just crumples to the ground. And the race officials come out, and they try to, scoop him up and get him out of there. And he waves him off, fights him off. He doesn't want. And so he gets up, and you start to see this determination. And he starts to try to get down the track, and he's just limping down the track. And you're he's at the 150-meter mark. He's got to go all the way around. And you just think, this guy, he's not going to make it. The pain is too great. His face was just twisted in pain. It was so heartbreaking to watch. And so suddenly you see out of the crowd, a guy jumps out of the crowd and starts running towards Derek Redmond from the stands. And the race officials don't know who this guy is, so they're trying to stop him. And then you see the guy say something to the officials, and then and so they kind of step away, and he pushes them away, and he comes over, and he grabs a hold of Derek Redmond. And there's this moment where Redmond looks over, and he recognizes him because it's his dad. There's a classic picture of the two of them. And his dad puts his arm around him, and he says, first he says, you don't have to do this. And Derek says, yes, I do. And then he says, well, then we're going to do this together. And if you watch the video, if you watch the footage, Derek Redmond's father, Derek leans on him, and he just walks him all the way around the track and all the way across the finish line. He says, we're going to walk this all the way in, man. It's going to be you and me. You don't have to do this alone. You can lean on me. You can go with me because I'm feeling you. I'm your father. I'm going to make sure you make it all the way. Jesus is saying to somebody today, he's saying, this is the image I want you to see me. I want you to see me as your father who's coming out to put my arm around you and to help you get across the finish line. I don't want you to think of yourself as being out there and doing it all by yourself, because I'm right there with you. And being yoked to me means we're in an intimate relationship. And being in an intimate relationship means we're going to walk it out together. We're going to walk it all the way in. If you go on YouTube, don't go on YouTube, man, because it's it goes in slow-mo. There's music. You're going to be bawling like I'm bawling. It's just it's a mess. But this is what... This is what Jesus is saying to somebody today. He's saying, I got you. I got you. Stop trying to make it on your own. You're exhausted. Man, you're wounded. You're broken. You're hurting. And I can walk it in with you if you'll just be in a relationship. Get your arm around me. We'll do this together. That's the first thing he says. The second thing, that if not only will you have intimate relationship, but I'm going to help you in terms of getting some focused direction. Some of you have you've veered off track. You've wandered off track. And you've gone astray, right? And you think that God is way out there going, you need to get back in line. And he's not doing that. He's saying, I want you to take my yoke upon you because I'm going to actually guide you back down the road that we need to be walking down. This is something that the first century would have known, the first century audience when Jesus was talking, because the way they would train a young ox in Palestine in the first century is they would take a young ox and they would put them in a double yoke with an old ox. And the old ox would be able to teach the young ox, hey, this is the way we walk down the row. We don't wander off and eat some grass. We don't wander down to the stream. We're just going to keep walking down this row. And when we get done walking down this row, we're going to go eat some corn. And then we're going to rest, okay? So, and that's how they, so Jesus, that's why he said, take my yoke up on you and learn from me. Because he's saying, not only are you going to have intimate relation, but I'm going to help you walk down the path that you need to walk down. You're going to learn from me. Ernest, would you come up here for just a minute? I had Ernest volunteered during the first service. Did you volunteer? Or, yeah, no, it was kind of. This is the image that he's saying. I'm going to be the old ox, and you're going to be the young ox. All right, all right, is that good? And Jesus is saying, all right, look, here's the way we're going to do this. We're going to walk here, all right, and then this is how we walk, and then we're going to turn here, and we're going to walk down this row. And when you get distracted and want to go over there, try to go over there. Don't try too hard. But I'm going to bring you back over here, right? He said, because you're going to learn from me. You're going to learn from me. We're going to be yoked together, and we're going to walk it out together. So I'm not condemning you from afar. I'm not judging you from afar. I'm not coming after you. I'm not mocking you. I'm not condemning you. I'm saying, hey, we're going to walk this thing out, baby. We're going to walk it out. Here's how we do it. Amen? I love you, man. That guy's awesome. So we come into intimate relationship when we're yoked with Jesus. We start to get focused direction when we are walking with Jesus. And then he tells us what the result is. And I love how he ends this passage. He says, when you do this, you will find rest. Not for your body, not just for your mind, not just for, what's going on in you will find rest in your soul. Your soul will be revived. Your soul will experience revival. Your soul will be refreshed. Your soul will be renewed. This is what he's saying. You're going to go from soul fatigue to soul revival. Soul revival. You're going to have a refreshment in your soul where you're experiencing the peace and the love and the joy and the courage and the faith and the enthusiasm and the integrity of a God who loves you because you're yoked to him. You're walking along. And then he said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. You know why his yoke is easy? When he says his yoke is easy, he doesn't mean it's just easy in general. He means it's easy for you because he's carrying the heavy part. He's carrying the heavy stuff. His burden is light for you because he's carrying the heavy part. He came and he said, look, I'm gonna spread my arms and I'm gonna take the sacrifice and I'm gonna take the pain and I'm gonna take the burden and I'm gonna take the trouble and I'm gonna take the fear and I'm gonna take the anxiety and I'm gonna put it all on me. And all your sin and all your distraction and all your pain and all your problems, I'm going to carry all that. If you'll yoke yourself to me, then what you're going to experience is the lightness of my righteousness and the lightness of my peace and the lightness of my hope and the lightness of my faith. You're going to experience the lightness of my yoke while I carry the heaviness of yours. So the question that we're going to close with today is this. Are you carrying your yoke by yourself? Or are you yoked to him? Are you yoked to him in your relationship? Are you yoked to him in your career? Are you yoked to him in your family? Or are you trying to carry that burden by yourself? Because he's saying, look, come and take my yoke upon you. Take it upon you. He's inviting you to carry a lighter load than you're carrying. Because he wants to refresh your soul. He wants to revitalize your soul. He wants to renew your soul. And here's the tricky thing with Jesus. Because if it were me, I would then have a 5-point plan, which you could then execute, and it would be a punch list. And you could do these 5 things, and then you will have refreshment in your soul. That's how I would do it. He doesn't do it that way. You say, Jesus, how am I supposed to experience the lightness of your load? And the only thing he said was this: come to me. Come to me, all you who are weary. Come to me, all you who are burdened. And this, the way he said that, it's a perpetual invitation. You may have already come to him, but then you veered off of him. You may have been yoked to him yesterday, but you're not yoked to him today. You may be struggling with anxiety and fear and distraction today, even though you were yoked to him yesterday. The invitation remains. Come to me. Come to me. You may have been a Christian for 1,000 years, and you're not yoked to Jesus this morning. And you're experiencing the struggle and the fatigue and the burden. And he's just saying, hey, all you got to do is come back. Come back. Take my yoke upon you. My yoke is easy. My burden is light. Let me tell you this. When we as a church stop trying to do it on our own, stop trying to be everything to everybody, when we as a community of people stop trying to be self-reliant, don't allow ourselves to get distracted, when we start to say, Jesus, we're just going to yoke ourselves to you. We are just going to yoke our life to you. There is not a building on the planet that will be big enough to hold a group of people who say, we want to be a sanctuary for your soul. We want to be a hospital, not a museum. We want to be a hospital for the weary, a hospital for the broken, a hospital for those who are struggling and in pain and addicted and falling away. We will. Do you know how many people are so fatigued outside of these doors right now? Like every other person is so fatigued right now. And a lot of folks in here are so fatigued. Jesus is saying, look, come to me. That's all you have to do. Come to me means you might just in your own heart today say, I accept your invitation. I need you. I can't do this on my own. I got to have you in my life. I've struggled. I've veered off. I've ignored you, and I'm coming back to you. It might mean that for you. He's just saying, come back, come to me, carry my yoke. And here's what we know. Here's what we know. When we put our faith in him, when we put our trust in him, when we put our hope in him, when we take his yoke upon us, then we will get the rest we need for our souls. Let me pray for you. God, I pray for those right now who are in this house, who are fatigued and they're worn out in some part of their life. They've been carrying a burden. It's just too heavy to carry by themselves. And they've been trying to carry it, or maybe they've tried to have other people help them carry it. Maybe they've just turned away from it and gotten distracted, and maybe they've experienced some anxiety and worry about where it's all going. And Lord, I just pray today that you would turn them back to you and that they would say, I accept your invitation. I'm going to take your yoke. I'm going to take your yoke upon me. I'm going to couple myself to you. I'm going to enter into an intimate relationship with you. I'm going to allow you to direct my focus. And I want to learn from you, and I want to be guided by you, and I want to follow your word, and I want to be led by your spirit, and I want to experience your love and your grace and your redemption in my life. I want to be restored, renewed. And yes, Lord, I want my soul to be revived by you. Father, I pray for every single person here today that they would experience the rest of your grace, the rest that comes in you, the Sabbath of knowing that you are our Savior and our Lord, and that you took the struggle upon yourself. Your body was broken, your blood was spilled, so that we could have rest in you. God, I pray that for every single person in this place. I pray that everything we do and say here today would just ultimately bring honor, praise, and glory to you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen, amen, amen. Amen, sister. She's feeling it over there. That's right, baby.